Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you back to another fabulous Friday Ramblings. I am your host, David, also known as occasionally the Bardic One. And we're going to have a little fun today because we're going to talk about one of the most divisive, if not controversial, topics in video games. Now, as per usual, we're going to try to do this from a very neutral stance. We're going to lay out what does and doesn't work. Or rather, I should say what it is and isn't. What I personally think does and doesn't work about it as a secondary thing. All in the hopes that we can get everybody to think about this subject a little more. And hopefully talk about it with people of differing opinions without being angry and hateful, because that's what we all want to accomplish. So, what is this thing? Is it Sega versus Nintendo? Nah. That ended when Sega got out of the hardware business and started putting things like Sonic games on Nintendo consoles. That war's long over, even though old people like me lived through it. Is it retro versus new stuff? Nah, I like playing it all. And anybody should. No. We're going straight to the Big Daddy. Straight to the one that just drives people nuts. Or at least drives me nuts. And that is DLC. That's right, we are going straight to the core of downloadable content. Now, downloadable content in the most literal definition of the term means anything you pull off the internet. So in gaming terms, any game you download is literally downloadable content. However, when the video game industry tends to use the term downloadable content, or more often DLC, because, hey, we all like acronyms, they are referring to software that is released as expanded content for previously released software. Add-on content. Now, we are not going to get into expansion packs, which do predate the popularity of DLC, because expansion packs are their own thing. We are going to note that there is a lot of similarity in base concept between expansion packs and DLC, which is giving the consumer more product to enhance and expand an existing product as opposed to a full-fledged sequel. However, expansion packs were generally used more, and the term, when referring to video games, back when you would have install discs. As opposed to actual pulling it off the internet. So, as I said, we've acknowledged expansion packs exist. We acknowledge expansion packs and DLC serves. Excuse me, a little bit of something here. That they serve the same basic concept of taking something that was put out on market and adding another layer to it. But we are picking specifically on DLC because DLC kind of took that concept to the very next level. Now, as a precursor to DLC in its form of added content, consoles did briefly here and there tease downloading entire games. First example, this was actually way back in the day with the Atari 2600 and their Game Line service. Unfortunately, because back then people were using dial-up, and and I'm talking very slow dial-up, 1200 BPS modem, and because most people simply really didn't understand what the concept of the internet and whatnot was. And of course, this is back in the days when dial-up being dial-up, if you were actively using it, you couldn't have phone calls coming to your house because people still had landline phones as their primary way of talking. Cell phones were barely a thing. So, you know, it was a good idea, but it never really caught on the way that people would have liked it. Now, Sega tried it years later with the Dreamcast and the Sega Channel. But again, because you're still dealing with a mostly dial-up world, and because definitely by the time the Dreamcast games were a lot bigger, file size-wise, and because Dreamcast itself had a lot of problems with marketing and just plain not getting the sales Sega really needed it to get. Now, I'm not saying it was a bad console empirically. There's a lot of things Dreamcast did that would innovate consoles from various other companies later on down the line. We'll certainly get into discussion of the Dreamcast as Sega's last hardware another time. But suffice to say, again, it was a concept ahead of its time and slightly hurt by the idea that the console it was associated with was itself not selling as much as Sega needed it to. So, yeah, if you don't have a lot of people with Dreamcast, you don't have a lot of people subscribing to their online services. So we jump forward to boom. The Xbox, which was the first company, well, the second company to implement downloadable content, but the first company to really push it and have the success of the hardware to where other people in the industry were like, hey, this is something we should get on too. Now, back in the day, a lot of the content was available for free. Some of the Microsoft published titles did charge for it, but it was not the norm yet. Now, this is important to note for the evolution of how DLC is treated on the business side of the video game industry, and part of my opinions on the current state of DLC. Now, with the Xbox 360, downloadable content became much more fully integrated and part of the business model, as they set up an entire subsection of the Xbox Live Marketplace to purchasing DLC. Now, Microsoft also had the good idea to, instead of it being a straight up put your excuse me, gotta get my words straight here, folks. Instead of putting your straight up credit card information in, you would purchase Microsoft points via gift cards, and you would in turn use those points in the marketplace. This is a strategy that Sony and Nintendo would both copy when they set up their eShops and PlayStation stores, or PlayStation Network, years later. So, there you go. Microsoft Xbox, I don't give it a lot of love because personally it never really clicked with me. And I mean the entire family consoles, the Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One, you know what? And they just never really clicked with me. But they do get a lot of credit for laying out a lot of the foundation that would be console DLC. Now, of course, as this was all going on, and Sony and Nintendo jumped on this, PCs would do this as well. This whole idea of a digital marketplace and being able to purchase physical gift cards that add credit to prevent you from directly putting your precious banking information onto a given server has been copied most blatantly by the Steam service. So, all this stuff really was not limited to consoles. PCs would catch up with this eventually as well. One of the most infamous examples of early DLC on consoles was the Horse Armor DLC package for The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Specifically, that the criticism came about that the horse armor was useless, as the horse itself really didn't have a hit point problem, and that the package was overpriced. Now, when we do say overpriced, let's go ahead and lay some stuff out. The infamous horse armor cost 200 marketplace points, which is equivalent to $2.50 in the US. The corresponding PC release cost was a little bit less at $1.99 US dollar equivalent. However, because the horse armor itself was basically an artistic change, paying $2.50 for that was considered overpriced. This is important to note. It is not necessarily that fans criticized paying $2.50 for downloadable content, but they expected that price for that downloadable content to have more of an impact on the gameplay and the amount of playable content in the game. Again, these are important things to consider when I mention that this was not well received. It's not directly the price, but what the content was for the price. That is the key to almost any debate about downloadable content. Is it appropriately priced for what it adds to the gameplay experience? Now, Sony itself would get into a bit of things with Gran Turismo HD, where they planned that the initial game itself was pretty bare bone, and that people would customize and unlock the bulk of the game via separate online microtransactions. The project itself was later canceled because that's just a really horrible way to do this. Nintendo is generally, when it comes to downloadable content that is not multi-platform, in which case it's like, well, we have this DLC, add-on, characters, levels, whatever, because this game's being put out on all the consoles, and all the consoles have this. As far as stuff Nintendo does that is unique to Nintendo, their games tend to generally have a sparser amount of downloadable content. Most of their digital distribution is their virtual console, as they call it, which is full downloads of classic games from previous Nintendo hardware. The basics of this being that you can sit there and pick up a Nintendo Switch, for example, and through the virtual console service, download most, if not every, major mainstream Mario game of previous consoles. Definitely the NES, Super NES, and Nintendo 64 entries. Again, I would have to double check Nintendo Switch Virtual Console to see if they went as far as the GameCube, Wii services. Not so much the Wii U's because it's only one generation behind, and most of your first-party Nintendo Wii U games have been ported to the Switch as physical disc releases anyway, with expanded content built into the games as part of the initial release. These are pretty easy to note if you're looking at the Switch games because they will use the term deluxe in the game titles, like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the original Mario Kart 8 game with a couple new characters and a battle mode unique to the Switch, as well as all the DLC from Mario Kart 8 that they did release in the Wii U version already installed on the game from the get-go. Which is something that all consoles and PCs have done with high-selling, especially major studio releases, where after a game has been out for a while and they have released all the downloadable content they're going to release for it, they will release a complete version that contains the original game and all the downloadable content as one big install. Now, one of the subgenres that is most infamous for downloadable content is the music rhythm video games such as Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Harmonix claimed at one point that Guitar Hero 2 would feature, quote, more online content than anyone has ever seen in a game to this date. And however, Rock Band itself features the largest number of downloadable items of any console video game, with a steady number of new songs added weekly between 2007 and 2013. Acquiring all the downloadable content for Rock Band would, as of July 12, 2012, cost $9,150.10. Holy hell, folks. Over $9,000, and that does not include the price of the original game. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and insert an opinion thing in there. There's a lot of gamers that are completionists. They want everything for a game. That is obscene. Like, that's just seeing that much content and doing even a vague estimation of that math, once you pass $1,000, like, that would just blow my mind as a consumer. Now, I wasn't playing Rock Band at the time, so I didn't know about this at the time, but yeah, it really, like, that is literally, I would have just been like, poof, like, I would have sat there and gone, are they insane? Are they seriously think I'm gonna spend not just hundreds but thousands of dollars getting this material? Like, what the heck? I mean, even reading this now, my mind is blown by that. That just, I mean, I get, in all honesty, they probably never intended for anybody to download all of it, but even, I mean, again, even 10% of all of that would be over $900. Like, you can buy a car for, you can put a down payment on a car for that much money. I mean, for the $9,000, you could pay off a decent used car. You know, a pretty good used car, depending on the dealer and how you negotiate. But, I mean, yeah, that's not over $9,000. That is a lot of content. That just... Now, Nintendo, of course, would not just use the concept of DLC for their home consoles, such as the Wii, Wii U, and Switch currently, but the Nintendo DS and its successor, the 3DS, also use the same eShop Virtual Console setup, and in fact, many games have free user-generated content, or even free add-on packs, such as Picross DS, where you could download puzzle packs of classic puzzles from previous Picross games. I myself owned that game, which is one of the reasons I'm highlighting this as an example, and I did grab the DLC because, hey, it was free. You know, and that's the thing. That's something we're definitely going to talk about a little more in a moment when we get into the hard editorial section here, because there is going to be a hard editorial section due to the nature of this Due to the nature of this conversation, you cannot discuss DLC without a bit of editorializing, because as I said, it is an extremely divisive, controversial topic among the video game industry. Blah. It's what happens when you do videos without a script in front of your face. Sometimes you get tongue-tied, but that's why I always brag that the beauty of this channel is that I do these things live. This is stream. Straight to you. No retakes, no edits. This is what you get. This is me. This is how it rolls. This is what it would be like if you sat down and were chilling with me. I am not going to clean myself up. I am not going to reshoot these things 4 or 5 times to make a perfect speech. Because that is uniqueness I give to you. That is my downloadable content. But, going back. Mobile devices such as cell phones and tablets also have games that are full of downloadable content and microtransactions. It is, simply put, a major nature of the beast in the video game industry. Now, we are going to touch on one of the most controversial subsections of DLC, something that is not done very often, because pretty much any time it shows up, there is a lot of flack from the fan base, and that is on-disc DLC. And that means that when you purchase DLC, you're not actually downloading new content to the device, but you're downloading a bit of programming code that enables access to content that is already present within your game's original data. The term on-disc DLC refers to the fact that, well, a lot of people do download complete games now, mostly so they can play it the second game street date. Many people like myself do generally still prefer for new titles to have a physical disc, because games are printed on disc now. Well, except for the Switch, because the Switch went back from discs to similar to the DS 3DS, using a memory card system similar to SD cards. So, which is part of why the Nintendo Switch does not have backwards compatibility with the Wii U. Which, you know, is neither here nor there. We're not going to get in that discussion. But, yeah, the term on-disc DLC does refer to the fact that The game data is in the original game, however, it is blocked from access until you pay to have the developers essentially unlock it for you. Now, again, I'm going to repeat this because this is why this practice gets flack almost universally. You buy the game. Now again, we're going to assume physical copy because it makes this whole explanation a little easier. You have the game on your disc, your little round disc. Not that small, it's not mini disc, but you know your round disc. The little hole in there for the spinning. And the data is on the disc. You paid for the data. But you are not allowed to access that data until you pay again. That is messed up. That would be like, again, for non-gamers, this would be like if you bought a Blu-ray of big theatrical movie. Let's think of something relatively recent so I don't make myself sound too much like an angry old man yelling at clouds. You know what? Avengers Endgame. You know what? We've all seen it. We all loved it. Great movie. Okay, well, we may not have all loved it, but we all seen it. You know, huge ticket sales. This would be like if you bought the Blu-ray disc of Avengers Endgame. And after you bought it and after you got it home and after you started playing it, you found out that while the movie is there, for some reason, even though the content is on the disc, you cannot watch any of the behind-the-scenes documentaries. And then a month later, you get a note saying, oh, hey, yeah, if you pay us another $3, you can unlock the documentary DLC. But it's not literally DLC, because you're not downloading the content, you're just downloading the permission to access the content, which you should have added to begin with because it was part of the game you already paid for. Now, we're going to discuss this a little more in depth later, but again, you could technically rationalize your way around it not being morally ambiguous, if not flat out morally wrong to do this, depending on how you price the game. But let me go ahead and assure you, people that you manipulate on-disc DLC generally charge full price for the game, even though the game is not the full game you thought you were buying. Because generally companies that are not greedy don't do on-disc DLC. Now, obviously some stuff now with the original game, we are going to clarify this yet. The game will naturally include data relating to future DLC in the sense of you have to program the game to know to go on to the shop service, you know, the Xbox Marketplace, PlayStation Network Store, Nintendo's eShop, to be able to download these updates so that DLC can be installed without major glitches and game crashing bugs. Or it may be that they knew they were going to have a particular feature, such as a variant on multiplayer, that for some reason they did not have properly tested or functional yet in the original version, so they chose to disable it, and then later on they released a update that fixes it and allows the multiplayer to be used and unlocked without causing problems for the game. That is a little bit different from what I am talking about with the previous rant. As I said before, using the movie example, this would be like if the documentary was on the Blu-ray disc, but you were not allowed to access it until you paid more money. Having things like additional characters or additional costumes or post-story mode levels on the disc that you paid full price for, but you're not allowed to access that until you pay even more money is, in my personal and humble opinion, crooked. So, when it comes to downloadable content, many games, especially major releases, will release downloadable content in waves. Now, if they know ahead of time they're going to do this, they will go ahead and offer a season pass, which means you pay one time a lump sum, and as the DLC comes out, you automatically get it downloaded, and you don't have to sit there and pay each individual time. You're essentially pre-ordering or reserving the DLC, depending on your preferred terminology. Now again, technically you can call microtransactions part of downloadable content, but microtransactions is definitely a completely different rant. Because with microtransactions, that tends to get more into your mobile games or online games such as the type offered on Facebook, especially by game developer Zynga. And we get into the whole pay-to-win model. That is definitely a separate video and a separate rant. We are going to focus on DLC in the classic sense of additional content to a game that you can otherwise play and finish with what you paid for and got to begin with. So, let's get into a little bit of the editorializing. When it's all said and done, DLC comes in two important, distinct categories, and that is free or for pay. Now, if you offer free DLC, by all means, you are awesome. I'm going to go ahead and give a lot of credit to a game that has already gotten a lot of credit among the video game industry, but it is a great one to do because, first of all, the publishers really deserve as much PR as possible because they have acted in the best interest of the fans at all times with this, even though being such a small independent game studio, they could blatantly have justified and rationalized charging for their DLC, and that is Yacht Club Games and Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight came out, and it was a pretty solid game, has been ported to pretty much every platform there is. And there was a complete full game in it. They have chosen to release DLC, allowing you to play the game in new variants of the story because you are playing as different characters with different motivations. It's not just simple skin. The characters feel different. They have different weapons. They have different jumping abilities. And again, their stories are different because of the different motivation and psychology of them. Shovel Knight released, I do say them because Shovel Knight released multiple versions of this. Multiple stories with multiple character leads. All of them have been free content. You paid for the original game, you got all of that DLC for free. That is awesome and that is wonderful. As I said, the developers of Shovel Knight, at the time they released it, this was their only game for their company. If anybody could have justified charging for this content, they could have. but they chose not to because it was content they had always wanted to put in the game, but for financial reasons, obviously they had to go ahead and release a game once they had a playable game that felt in and of itself like it was plenty of game to it. But even though they won over a lot of fans, they still decided to stick to their guns and say, look, this is stuff we kind of wanted to have in the game to begin with, and we ourselves know as fans how much we hate things like being overpriced for content that should have already been in the game. So, no, you get this stuff for free. Mad props to Yacht Club Games. Mad props to Shovel Knight. If you have never played that game, go online, find it. Because all the DLC has been released, as I said before, back there, you can now get a full version of the game with all the DLC pre-installed, so you can just from the get-go have it all. Seriously, Shovel Knight, play it if you've never played it. I don't care if it's now considered an older game. Who cares? Play it. Play all the modes. It's fun as sin. Now, there are many other games that do this. However, I'm not going to sit there and start naming names all over the place because naturally I'm not going to be able to cite every single example across every console and PC and mobile. There's just so many different platforms, so many different games put out, so many different companies. I don't want people thinking I am intentionally excluding games because of any kind of bias. We do not have bias here on the Friday Ramblings. We may have some heated opinions, but we are not intentionally trying to snub anybody. I called out Shovel Knight because I love that game so very, very much, and because it's an easy example. It's out on every platform. Every platform offered the DLC for free, so no matter who you roll with, you can take advantage of this company's philosophy. Now, when it comes to paid DLC, this is where a lot of controversy comes in. This is where a lot of I get annoyed with stuff. Let me get a little closer here, folks, because I really... This is the part where, as I said, I'm going to tend to upset a few people. In my humble opinion, and it is just my humble opinion, feel free to disagree with me. You do not have to have a need to hate me. You do not have to have a need to cancel me if you disagree with me, because we are all here to respect each other's opinions and viewpoints and philosophical perspectives on what is moral and ethical in the business world. But games that tend to release yearly sequels, mostly picking on sports titles. However, there are a few other games that it seems like every year and a half they release another game that do multiple waves of DLC and it's all paid for, tend to piss me off. This is one of the reasons why, as I have stated in some of my gaming stream things, I have not actually owned a WWE game in a few years because their DLC got freaking ridiculous. And in fact, the last one I bought a year after it had come out, and not only got all the DLC packaged as one big bundle, but the cost of all of that was lower than the price of the original game because no, I was not going to pay for the price of the game as well as a large percentage of that original retail price for content that they had known from the get-go they were going to have in the game. Because, let's be honest, if you know you have less than a year before to get all of your DLC out and you are releasing it in 3 or sometimes more waves, depending on the company, 3 to 4 is usually your standard, then you had most, if not all, of this planned to begin with, which means you could have just put it in the original game and said, screw DLC, and just given people a lot more content. I will give an exception. I cannot think of any concrete examples, but theoretically, I would not be upset if you were to say, look, we're going to have DLC release, we're going to have like 3 waves release in the next, 6-7 months, but because of that, because we have it all planned, because we know we're going to put the content in there, we are offering the base retail game at a discounted price, so that when it's all said and done, all of this content that we intended to be in the original game, if you buy all that plus the original game, you're not going to pay more than you tend to pay for most brand new games on this given system. That would be friggin' awesome if people did that. It's like, oh yeah, we got like $20 in DLC. We know we're going to have it, so yeah, pay $20 for the season pass, but we're only going to charge you like $25 for the original game because, frankly put, there's only about half of the original game in there. I would love that attitude for more game companies. You know, be honest about it. You're not releasing the full game, so don't charge full price. Or, as I said, charge full price and make those DLC waves free. Nobody's ever going to argue with free content. Especially major studios. Look, I hate to break it to you guys, but if anybody can afford to take the hit, you can. You know, it would be good PR. Think of it that way. Take some money out of that advertising budget, because most of your advertising is a complete waste of time anyway. All that money you pay people behind the scenes to pad your review scores. No. Just take the hit, release free DLC, and look like good people. You want good review scores? Release good games. Now, having said that, I will say there is a time and a place to pay for DLC. It's like this. You release a game. You're not sure how the game's going to do. You know, you put out what you got. Game sells really good. You know, 6-7 months later, you say, okay, look. Since the game sold really well, since people love the game and want to keep playing the game, we have now made the decision to release DLC. We have figured out what that DLC is going to be, and it'll be out in probably another, 4 or 5 weeks. That, sure, go ahead and pay for that. It was never intended to be in the original game. The original game was a complete game. This is additional content for those who want it. Because, hey, the game's proven it. See, that's my other problem with people that release DLC before the game is even street dated. Where it's like you're sitting there reading hype pieces the day or two before the game street dates. And I know I keep using that term. For those of you who don't deal a lot with the media, entertainment world, street date refers to... Woo. That's what you get for snacking right before you record. A little bit of heartburn. As I said, that's fun with doing stuff. One take. I use the term street date because the term street date is used within the industry to refer to the day that every single store that is going to carry a product sells the product to the public, i.e. the date it hits the streets. I'm not going to get into the full etymology of the term, but the simple basic idea is that, well, the game is physically sent out of the warehouses well before it is sold to the public, mostly to make sure everybody that needs copies has copies. Also because with both movies and video games, there tends to be a concept called pre-orders. So it's like, yes, there's the day you can start paying for your pre-order of the game and the day you actually get the game. That is the street date. So, a little bit of definition clarity, but yes. If you know you're going to have content in a game before the street date, even if you did not get around to programming it, and you're sitting there and advertising the season pass before anybody's even played the game, I don't care how much confidence you have in the game. That's just weird. That should be free DLC. Because even if you hadn't gotten around to programming yet, you knew it was going to be in there. You plan to have it. It's not a reward for people for for loving your game. It's not a response to fan feedback saying, hey, give us more game because this thing's better than we ever thought it could be. You were going to do it regardless of the sales, good or bad. That's squinky. I'm sorry. Maybe I am old. Maybe I am out of touch, but I don't like when companies do that. I really don't. You know, if business and fiscal quarters and deadlines force you to release a game before you can put everything in there you wanted to put in there, free DLC. You know, reward your fan base who bought the game, even though you yourself felt like you were not giving them a full game. Especially if they pay a full price. Again, it's the math. It's the context of everything. I don't think everything should always be free all the time. If you're paying full price for a game and the people that made the game don't feel like they gave you a full game, don't charge them again for the rest of the game. But if you release a full game and people love it and they ask for more content, yeah, charge for that. I mean, that I can get behind the business of that. You know, you charged them $50, $60. You gave them $50, $60 worth of game. You may have given them what you thought was $75, $80 worth of game, depending on, you know, how proud you are of your work. If they want more at that point, then yeah, go ahead and charge them. That's supply and demand at work. But don't intentionally start outlining a game. Don't intentionally decide what is and isn't going to be in the game and say, no, don't program that yet. We can charge $5 for that later, after they play what we feel like giving them, what we decide is a good start to the game. No. Full game or not full game. Full game, full price. Not full game, not full price. Charge DLC when the fans demand the DLC. Free DLC when you really should have had it in the game to begin with. And for God's sakes, if it's already programmed on the disc, don't you dare charge people to unlock that data. That is not downloadable content. That is blackmailed access. Boo on you. I don't ever want to hear that, especially from a major A-list company again. I'm not calling anybody out because you know who you are. You got your negative PR for it already. And I love you for a lot of other stuff you do, so I also don't want to call you out. But you know what you've done in the past. Boo on you. So to go ahead and end this video on a positive note, I am going to say that yes, the concept of downloadable content is in and of itself not a sin. The way the money-centered businessmen that run video game companies can sin through the concept of DLC. So, as consumers, please stop and think about what you're purchasing before purchasing it just for the sake of having everything associated with a game. Ask yourself, is this downloadable content worth the money they're asking for it? Is this downloadable content truly add-ons that should, be charged for because we as fans demanded they do it and they're just giving us what we want, more product? Or is this something that really is really should have been part of the original game. You know, be a conscientious consumer. By all means, you know, if it's free, pull it all. I don't care. Buy the bigger hard drive. Buy the extra memory cards. Get every free thing you can if people willingly give it out for free for the sake of being cool people, because free is always fun. Freebie, freebie, just like my videos are free, 'cause you don't pay to have my content unlocked. So download it if you want, stream it as you choose, 'cause I have content that is for you every Friday and Tuesday. That's the gaming stuff. Playing video games. Rambling on Friday. Gaming on Tuesday. Or Wednesday morning if you don't watch the live stream. Yep, lost the rhythm on that one, but that's why I'm not a songwriter. Still, whether you think I'm completely full of nonsense, whether you 100% agree with me, be healthy, be happy, be safe, be sane. And I hope you're still here in 7, because I will be back in 7, and I will have another rambling for you. And hopefully, it won't require quite as much editorializing or a couple bouts of heartburn. Really got to think twice about what I snack on. Later, taters.